Hey everyone, how's it going today? I just finished making this war game in Vue JS, so I'm just going to demo it for you. If I click play game, I can draw cards, and you'll see player 2 here had the bigger number, so player 2 got a point. Do it again. Player 2 got another point. This is a tie, so nobody gets a point. Player 2 is absolutely destroying player 1 here. Alright, there's 1 point for player 1. Anyway, that's the point. This is the game. If you've ever played War with cards, it's essentially that, but the whole thing is built in Vue. It's really not that complicated. It's less than 100 lines of code. So if you want to see how I build it, stay tuned and watch the video. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is inside of my terminal, I'm going to create a new Vue project by saying Vue create, and then I'm going to call this war. It's going to ask if I want to use Vue 3. I do, so I'm going to press the down arrow once and then enter. Alrighty, now I'm going to open this up in my text editor. And I'm going to start getting rid of some of the boilerplate here. I'm going to get rid of this components file because we're just going to be using one component. I'm going to get rid of the assets. And then we're going to be working out of this app.vue. I'm just going to clear it out a little bit. I'm going to say npm run serve. While this is loading, I'm going to get some of our base template going. Let's make a header 1 here. And let's write war game. Let's make a div here with an ID equal to game. Let's make 2 divs. One will be player 1. The other can be player 2. Let's open this up. Alright, now I'm going to start typing some JavaScript here. So we're going to make a setup method here. This is where the majority of our code is going to reside. So let's define some variables first. Let's say let game over equal ref true, card 1 equal ref. This will be an object. We should actually also probably grab ref. That should be the first thing that we do. We can do that by saying import ref from Vue. Let's also import Axios. And let's install Axios. We can do that by saying npm I Axios --save. We're going to be using Axios in order to work with the card API. It's a phenomenal API. I highly recommend checking it out if you want to make any other kinds of card games like blackjack or poker or something. Alright, let's also do card2 equals ref object deck ID can equal a ref null and then let's do player 1 score, which can equal a ref of 0. Then we're going to copy this and do the same thing for player 2 score. And that should be all of the variables that we need to define. Let's type npm audit fix, see if we can fix some of these vulnerabilities. I mean, it's Axios, it's a very popular thing to use, so I feel comfortable using it, but we're going to see. Alright, a lot of errors. That's okay. Let's just run the server. And you'll see we have a whole bunch of errors here. It's just a bunch of things that are assigned but never used. That's totally fine. For the time being, I'm just going to literally console log every one of these things just so that that error doesn't pop. And there we go. Now we don't have an error. This is kind of an easy way to cheat the system. I mean, it's a good system to have in place because you don't want to be defining things you're not using, but we're going to be using these later in the program, so I'm not worried about it. All right, continuing on, let's make a new function. Let's make an async function called getDeck. Let's say game over value equals false. And let's say if deck ID value equals null. What we can do now is create a new deck. So let's say const data equals await axios.get. And now I'm going to copy and paste the link, and I'll explain to you what this is doing. Basically, what this is doing here is this API is going to get us a brand new deck of cards, and we're going to get an ID of that deck, which we can use later to keep drawing cards. It's a super cool ID, and I'll show you with some console logs as we go about writing the program. So let's say this, deck ID value equals data deck ID. And of course, we should also probably call this function. I'll call it with a button later, but for now, let's just call it statically. Then let's say console log data, just to show you what this data looks like. So check this out. You get a deck ID, the amount of remaining cards, if it's shuffled, success, all this stuff, which is great because this is our brand new deck. And now we can access this deck by calling to the API with the deck ID and get 2 new cards. And we're going to do that in another function. We're going to call it getCards. So async function. Actually, I want to call it outside of this, sorry. Async function getCards. And inside of this, let's say const data equals await axios.get. And again, I'm going to copy this from a previous JavaScript I wrote, but I will explain it. So what we're doing here is we're going into this API And instead of getting a new deck, we're passing the deck ID value. And then we're saying draw count equals 2. So what this is going to do is it's going to actually return us 2 cards. Again, I'll call this function just so that it runs. And then we'll console log the data so that I can show you what we're working with here. Func is defined but never used. How did I manage to type that? I don't know what I did. I didn't want to pull that in at all. That's weird. Okay, let's go into the console. Error. Responded with a status of 404 not found. Oh, okay. I know why this is happening. So this is happening because we actually don't have this yet, because that's an async function and so is this. So that makes sense. So we're going to have to do is make this happen with a button. So let's return this by saying return get cards. Sorry, that has to go inside of the setup. And now we can access it inside of our HTML. So let's say button at click equals get cards. And then let's say something like draw cards. Okay, nice. This is giving me an error here because it's not data period deck ID, it's data period or data underscore deck ID. So now if I refresh this, I can draw the cards. I just drew 2 cards. So you'll see now there's only 50 cards remaining. And if we look at the cards, you'll see we have 0, and it gives us a code, an image, images, a suit, a value, and then we also have card 1, which is the same thing, but just a different card. And this is essentially the idea, right? Each time we draw cards, we're going to be drawing 2. One goes to player 1, one goes to player 2. The one that has the higher score wins. That's how war works. So let's write. Let's write a little bit more code now. Okay, so first thing we can do is let's get the remaining cards. So let's say const remaining equals data cards remaining. And then let's say const cards equals data. We'll just destructure the cards. And then we have to get card 1 value equals cards 0 and card 2 value equals cards 1. All right, now that we have all this, we should be able to set up our HTML. What are we going to want to return from this? Well, we're going to want to return card 1, card 2. Remaining is assigned but never used. For right now, let's just console log remaining, just to cheat that for a little bit. We can also get rid of a lot of this stuff because we are using it now. I think we're using all of these and Axios. Nice. Okay, so let's set up some more HTML. Inside of this header 4, we can just say player 1 And then let's make a div and give it the class equal to card. And let's just do an image here. And then what we can say is src equals, let's say card1 question mark, right? Because we're not going to originally have one of these. So here we're saying if there's a card1, then let's get the images. And if there's images, then let's get the PNG. And there we go. We have one image. And it should change each time we draw the cards. Nice, it's working. Let's do the same thing for player 2. And then this is just going to change to card 2. And you should see each time we press draw, we get 2 different cards. This is working perfectly. This is exactly what we want to see here. This is the raw functionality of the game, but we're going to need to keep score. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually make a function at the beginning of the script outside of the whole exporting and the setup. And I'm going to call this translate cards, which is going to have a value. Inside of this, we're going to make a switch. It's going to take in the value. And the first case is going to be for Jack, right? Because the problem here is that these are going to come in like this: Jack, King, Queen, Ace. And we need to translate this to a value. So case Jack, value equals 11. Case Queen, value is going to equal 12. King, value will equal 13. Ace, value will equal 14. And for the default, well, we can just break. And then we can return value. All right. Back inside of the getCards function, what we can say here is const value 1 equals parse int, and then we're going to call translate cards, and we're going to pass cards card1 value. We're going to do the same thing here for card 2. And then let's console log them and see what we get. We get undefined and nan, so that's not good. That's not good at all. Let's see. Oh, I know why this is happening, because we need to get the value. Okay, now it's working. Now we have 3 and 10. Draw it again, 12 and 11, draw it again, 2 and 5, and you'll see when we do eventually get like a Jack or something, it comes up as an 11 and not a funky name. So that's working good. Now we're going to be able to make a mathematical comparison between the two to see who has the bigger number and who's the winner. Okay, so what we can say here is if value 1 is greater than value 2, player score 1 dot value plus equals 1. And then we can take the inverse of this and say player 2 score plus equals 1. Lastly, let's say if remaining triple equals 0, game over equals true. Okay, now one thing I don't like about this is I think that I'm going to get rid of all these console logs here. We shouldn't need them anymore. But I think that I was noticing remaining is for some reason undefined. So we might have to do a little digging to figure out what's up with that. Let's see. Yes, remaining is undefined. Data, cards, remaining. Let's see if we're grabbing the right thing here. Let's console log data, draw cards, I see, so it's right in here, we just need to grab the remaining. That's better. Now it's 50, and then it's 48, 46, so on and so forth. Okay, good, that's all set. The next thing that we can do here is directly grab our player 1 and player 2 score, so we're going to have to return those. And then inside of here, I'm going to move this button into here. I'm going to say div ID. I'm going to say div ID equals scoreboard. I'm going to paste that button because I actually want it to be in here, and I'll show you why in a minute. But first, let's get these scores up and going. Let's make a header 4. Let's say player 1 let's echo out player 1 score, and then player 2 let's echo out player 2 score. Right now these are both zeros, but you'll see each time we draw, the bigger number gets to go over there, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Awesome, that seems to be working good. Now let's say for this whole div, vf equals not game over. Oop, my HTML got a little bit messed up. I'm going to move some of this stuff around. Sorry about that. That's better. This should all be inside of game, and then player 1, player 2, scoreboard. Perfect. Let's return game over. And let's get rid of the calling of this function. I believe it's right after get cards, we call get deck. Let's get rid of that. I know, get deck is defined but never used. Well, that's okay because we're going to return get deck. And we have a blank screen, which is exactly what we want. What we're going to say at the end of this div is div vif game over. And then we're just going to make a button here. And the button should say play game, and on click what we'll do is we'll just say get back. Okay, so you click play game, draw cards, and ideally once we draw all the cards, the game will be over. Look at that, game's over. Now one problem that we have is it doesn't actually go to game over, right? We just can't draw cards anymore because we're all out. We're going to fix that though. I'm going to say game over value equals true. Sorry about that. I'm always mixing that up in Vue. And then we're going to reset the player scores. So player 1 score value equals 0. Player 2 score value equals 0. Okay, so let's draw all the cards and see if we get a reset here. We do. We get a reset, and when we click play game, the numbers start again at 0. That's exactly what we want. We now have a fully functioning war game. So hopefully this was fun to build. If you liked this video and you found it helpful, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. I love making content on Vue JS, but I also make a lot of other programming videos. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you have a great day and take it easy.